All right, Knox, sit. Sit, Maya, sit. Knox, Maya. This is their roadmap to success. These are great dogs. I just think that their confusion is that they think that, I think because there was a lack of rules and structure, I think the dogs are in the impression that they have the same authority as their humans or have more authority than their humans. So when they're really excited, they are not listening to the humans. For her, when she does a lot of barking, watching them outside, I think they both think they're on duty. They think they're security guards. I'm like, damn. But no, not so much. All right, so let's talk about the things we went over during the session. I like dogs to identify to humans like children do to parents. And I achieve that through enforcing rules consistently. You have a window of 3 seconds to correct or reward your dog for them to make the connection, but it will have to be repeated enough for them to make that connection. Dogs live through repetition, consistency, and good timing. 3 seconds maximum. 3 seconds maximum time to reward the dog. 1/3 of a second is your goal. So the faster you reward the dog, the better. Now, some of the rules we went over, one of them would be not being allowed in the kitchen, but because he's a resource guard in the kitchen, we're going to skip that one. But it's for dogs to be within 7 feet of a dog or anyone's eating is a way of challenging for their food. This is why it's so inappropriate to feed a dog from the table, because you're giving them a conflict resolution. You're messing with their heads, really. Also, most human food has onion and garlic in it, like I talked about in the other video, and that's toxic to dogs. So when somebody's eating on this couch or in this area, I would say that imaginary line that goes from the edge of the couch to here, maybe about 3 feet in front of this, goes here and then there. So it's a square here. The dogs can be anywhere else, but not there when someone's eating. Also, we have a little area between the table and the couch. The dogs shove their way past. Shoving is not something that we typically do to authority figures. So I would not allow them, if humans are sitting there, if they can walk there on their own without touching us, that's fine. But as soon as they shove us, we're going to use those escalated consequences. We're going to stand up or hiss before we see it happening if possible. But if not, we'll stand up, turn to face them, and walk towards them, and we're going to crash. And we're going to stop enforcing it at the edge of the table. That's how we enforce an invisible boundary. So, other rules, the dog should go out the door second after a human goes, unless we're just letting the dogs out on their own. If I go to the door and I say sit, I'm going to tell them to sit. They have to sit before I let them out of the door. If I say sit and Knox sits and Maya doesn't, I would let Knox out and walk away from the door. Wait 1 minute. Maya's probably going to bark. We're going to ignore her because she's trying to get a response from us. After 1 minute, we go back to the door and we tell her to sit again. She doesn't sit this time, we'll walk away for 2 minutes, next time for 4 minutes, next time for 8 minutes. We keep on double the length of time until when I go to the door and say sit, she sits. And then I open the door immediately, like there's remote control in their butt. Sitting is a more subordinate position for dogs. That's why I incorporate the sit in a lot of different things. So they have to sit before they go in or out of the door. I first started with whatever direction they want. If they want to go outside, start with them inside. I wouldn't do this with the puppy because puppies still potty trained. Puppies cannot be reliable about their bladder until about 30 to 40 weeks. And the guardian mentioned he does have a tendency to pee right at the door. So for the puppy, I'd probably start taking him more often, every hour. Maybe just set a timer at the top of the hour every time we take them out. The other thing is, right after they wake up, 5 minutes after they get done eating, and 15 minutes after the start of heavy playtime, take them outside. The idea is to take the dog outside and have it be in the area where it can eliminate, because dogs just let it rip. They don't like to think, oh, I'm here, I won't pee here, unless they're in the den, where they live. And so for dogs, they might go down the hall and pee, and for them, that's fine. So we have to teach them the rules we want living in our world. So for the puppy, teaching him to go outside and potty is much more effective if we just take him out and he happens to find himself outside at the times that he does need to potty. Now, the way I do potty training is most people say potty, go potty, or they leave the dog outside for half an hour and they come back inside and the dog potties. So like, what do you want? They get mad. Don't get mad. Your dog gets distracted, especially as a puppy being outside. So take it outside, give it 5 minutes. If it doesn't go in 5 minutes, bring it back inside, put it in its kennel, put it back on the leash, and tie the leash to your belt. Do not let it out of your sight. It only needs to be out of your sight for a second to pop. After about 15 minutes, take it back outside, give it another 5 minutes to go, and watch it. As soon as it starts to appear poop, say poop, or whatever your word is to go potty. One time in a normal, calm, not overexcited tone of voice. You should be following your dog around, so you're within about 10 feet of him at a point. As soon as he starts to appear poop, say poop, or whatever the word is you want to use for potty. As soon as he finishes, give him the treat, and then say the word poop, and again, after the treat goes in the mouth. When you're using dog treats for training, the dog should hear the command word right after the treat goes in their mouth, and exclusively the dog word, or the command word. Not good potty, not go sit, or whatever it is, just the command word. Now you have 2 dogs, so we might want to say Knox, come. or Maya sit, but I wouldn't want to use good dog or good potty or go do this or any of those adjectives. Just say just the command word and don't overemphasize it. Say sit, sit. I actually, if I give a dog a command, I say it twice. If he was standing there, I would say sit as a command. When he sits, let's see if I can do it with it. Sit. Sit. So I say sit during the command stage, and I repeat it during the reward stage. The command stage is to get the dog to do the action. The reward stage, I want to amplify the benefit of following the human's command. So as soon as she sits, I pet her and I just say the word sit. Now I want to pet her under her chin like this. When a dog feels good about itself, his nose is parallel to the ground or tilted upward. So if we pat a dog at the top of the head, we have a tendency to create a nose down orientation. Insecure dogs look down. I want dogs to feel confident, especially about things I want them to do. So I'm going to pet them under their chin whenever possible. We can scratch them, we can caress them, we just do not want to pat on top of their head. Now, if the dog is inverted, his head's there and his butt's here, I can scratch his butt. I don't have to reach over and scratch under his chin. We just want to avoid patting on top of the head. Now, something else I like to do is what I call, well, let me see. I'm trying to think if there are other rules that we have. The dogs should, when the humans are feeding the dogs, right now the dogs are only being fed once a day. I'd like them to be fed at least twice a day. And when we feed them, the human who's feeding them should eat something in front of the dog before the dog eats. Dogs eat in order of their rank. So if the human's eating first, every time we feed the dog, it's a very small, minor way that we can help reinforce that we're the leader and they're the follower. Another thing I went over with the guardian is not walking through the dogs. He already does this. I don't know if does your partner do that as well?
I don't know.
So if the dog is in your way, walk through them. Leaders do not defer to followers. If you walk around your dog, you're telling your dog you're more important than I am. So instead, walk right through the dog. The dog needs to learn to get out of your way, unless it's in a resource guarding situation like he has to do. I consider petting a dog our way of paying the dogs. Right now, I think the humans here are petting the dogs for doing at times when they're doing the wrong thing. If he's barking, or the other day he was growling at one of the guardians, and the guardian he was with was petting him while he was doing it, trying to console him. But anything your dog is doing when you pet it is where you're amplifying and reinforcing. So if the dog is growling and I'm petting the dog thinks I'm being petted for growling at the other human. So also for dogs, the height matters. The higher a dog sits, the more rank or status they have. If you're petting the dog and he does this is a dominance move. So immediately stop petting him. For dogs, one of the rules I would suggest the dogs are not allowed in the furniture for at least 30 days, or as long as the problem's still going on. Because for a higher a dog sits, the more rank or status they have. Because he was growling at one of us on the bed, I would say the bed is off limits. Remember, these are privileges, not rights. How about you down? Can you down for us, Knox? I can do a little bit if you go. Nope. Now, as soon as he gets up, then the treat goes away. Whenever I'm using a treat to lure a dog, keep it within an inch of the dog's nose. If you move it too far away from the dog's nose, they stop tracking it. Put him in a sit by just going over his head. Sit. I use that hand motion to achieve that. So another rule would be the dog's not allowed to be on the furniture for at least 30 days or as long as these problems are still going on. Once we have no more resource guarding, the dogs are listening, she's no longer barking like crazy and every little thing, then we can maybe invite them on a couch when the humans decide. And the humans are in charge of it. Now if the human invites the dog up and the dog starts barking, she has to get down. Or if we invite Knox up on the couch and he gets down to go to drink water, when he comes back, he would need another invitation to get back up. That way the dogs literally see the humans as up here and they're down here, and the dogs see themselves as having less authority than the humans. Now I talked earlier about sitting is a more subordinate position. So for me, petting our dogs is our way of paying our dogs. Right now the guardians are paying the dogs for doing what they want, so the dogs don't have any motivation to listen to the humans. Because if they do what I'm supposed to do or I don't do it, I get the reward anyways. If one treat comes out, we're both getting a treat no matter what. So what I would do for the treats is pull out one treat and say, come, whoever comes and sits first who gets the treat, whoever comes second doesn't get a damn thing. Whoever lays down, whoever does whatever the action is. After a while, both dogs will start competing to be obedient. Right now they're competing for your attention and they're breaking the rules to do it. So for the furniture, no furniture for 30 days or as long as problems going on. After that, with an invitation only. I consider petting a dog, and this is the third time I've started this, but I consider petting a dog our way of paying a dog. If we pay the dog for doing the things it wants, we're going to create a petulant dog just like we would create a spoiled child if we gave the child everything it wanted. So when the dog wants something from us, we're going to tell it to sit. I use this hand motion over the head in an arcing pattern, not just up, in an arc. And as soon as the dog sits, I lower my hand, let them lick it off my hand, and then I tickle under their chin to facilitate that nose up orientation. And I would say the command word of sit or down or whatever it is. So when the dog tells the human what to do, especially if they nudge us or scratch at us or bark at us, humans don't respond anymore. But as soon as the human tells the dog what to do and the dog does it, then the dog is rewarded for that. There's a benefit for the dog. And so now we're creating an incentive and a motivation for the dog to listen to us. Also, sitting is a more subordinate position. So the dog starts to understand the only way that I'm going to get attention from the human is sitting. After a while, he'll come and prepay by sitting in front of the human saying, look, I'm sitting, can you scratch me behind this ear? We want to do that as much as possible. Otherwise, we're going to go back to doing what we're doing, but we're rewarding them for desired actions and behaviors. Now, petting with purpose, we talked about paycheck. If the roommate comes in or a partner and we see that somebody is petting the dog without a purpose, we're going to say paycheck. The other person stops petting. We say sit. As soon as the dog sits, we pet her on the chin, say sit. Then we'd say, actually, I asked him to sit before he came in the room. He just heard you coming, and so he stood up, and I continued to pet him. That's allowed. After a while, the dog will come and prepay, sit down to prepay for attention. When he does that, make sure, like I said, we're petting him. And again, you can scratch, but prefer pet him under his chin to get that nose up. This leads me to something I call passive training. Every time the dog does something you want, pet him and reward him. One of the things the guardian notices, he doesn't always like to come inside from outside, because when we call him, that represents the end of playtime. He's having a good time in the backyard, and now I come in, and now I'm not having a fun time. So for passive training, it's simply waiting for the dog to do whatever he wants. So right now I'm going to do it with Knox. Come. He came to me, so I petted him and said, come. I gave him a treat and said, come. I didn't ask him or lure him to do it. I waited for the dog to do it on his own, and I just simply rewarded him. So every time your dog sits next to you, pet him and say sit. Every time he lays down, pet him and say crash. Every time he comes to you, pet him and say come. If you want to, pet him every time he stretches and say stretch. This is a slower way of training him, but after a while you can say stretch, and he'll stick his butt in the air and stand up and yawn on command. You're just rewarding the things you want your dog to do. Now the dogs know what they can do to make us happy. Most of the time we do a really crappy job of communicating that to them. Simply rewarding them. And I usually use the watchword vocabulary. So if we say vocabulary to our partner, we just look at the dog and we narrate whatever the dog happens to be doing. Dog just standing there, assume that he came, and pet him and say come. If he's sitting, pet him and say sit. We want to try to pet him, like I said, within that 3-second window. But the most important thing is we're recognizing that and rewarding those things. The more we do that, the more they're apt to do that. Now for the backyard, since they don't like to come inside always, what I would do is go outside with a treat, walk about 5 paces outside, say come, give the dog a treat when it comes, and then come back in, turn around, come back inside, leave the dog outside. Next time you do it, maybe you go out 4 feet, repeat, 3 feet, repeat, 2 feet. Then you say, just open the door and say come, he comes to you. And this time you have him come in, you toss the treat on the floor, he comes inside. This way we're teaching the dog that coming to me doesn't represent the end of fun. It just means come to the human and get rewarded. And now he's much more inclined to do that. Let me see. The escalating consequences that I went over, we do not want to use those. We're going to allow him to be on the couch right now. He just got up. Yeah. But normally we would say off. And if he doesn't get off, if he's not resource guarding it, I would grab him by his collar, pull him to the edge of the couch so he feels like he's about to fall. When he jumps off on his own, I reach over and pet him and say the word off. So we're creating a positive association and creating a command word. If you get off of something, you get a reward. Let me see. I was just talking about something I forgot my train of thought. Yes. I would feed them in the order of their rank. Right now, she is kind of the more domineering dog out of the two, but he has more of the behavior we want. Now, right now, we're feeding them separately. And again, make sure they stay 7 feet away from each other when they're feeding. If you get past all these things, you want to set up a structured feeding, let me know. But again, try to go to at least twice a day for feeding so they're not so frustrated and feeling that all day long. Also, these are dogs that are being bred. They're going to probably have another litter. After that second litter, if you're done breeding them, I would seriously consider neutering Knox. It's going to ratchet things down a little bit. 3 times to neuter a dog is before 6 months, before a year, and before 5 years. After 5 years, it won't make a difference. But if they have their huevos and they're not allowed to use them, that creates a lot of frustration. And if they have them, even if they are using them, that does create a little bit more domineering personalities, a lot more, more determined behavior, and sometimes more protected behavior. So once you're done with that, with the breeding, I would go ahead and get that done because it just takes it off their brain and makes it a lot easier. It's not going to solve your problems, it's going to make it easier for you to solve your problems. Let me see, for the, so I went through everything here for resource guarding. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. The escalating consequences, I'll go through them here real quick because our partner is not here. He's on the road right now bringing home the bacon. So basically what we would do is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hiss one time before the dog does the wrong thing. And again, this does not apply when the dog is resource guarding. So if the dog is, let's say somebody's eating here at the couch area and one of the dogs coming out of the kitchen and walking towards, we would hiss when he's about 9 feet, a foot or two away from the 7-foot boundary. Once the dog crosses that boundary, and we're only hiss one time per incident, I have 10 hisses. Level 1 hiss like a tss, and level 10 hiss more like a tss. If you can see the dogs, they both snap, there we go. So that is, by using the same intensity, we teach the dog that we're serious about something. I can go get it. You are blocking me a little bit, so I'm going to go back to my knees. I'm old now. My knees are not as good as they used to be. So first thing we do is we hiss one time per incident. Second thing we do is we stand up abruptly, which I cannot do from this position. But standing up is your business position to a dog. When you stand up, your authority goes whatever direction your belt buckle is facing. Your dog is going to take a step back when you stand up. If you stand up suddenly, make sure you do it in a big sudden movement. They're going to take a step back, and then they're going to try to identify, did you just stand up quickly because you got stung in the butt by a bee, or are you upset with something I'm doing? So once it takes a step back, it's going to walk to the right or the left around you to see, are you tracking me with your hips? If you don't track with your hips, he's like, whew, that was a bee, I'm okay. But if you track with your hips, the dog's like, oh man, they're talking to me. How do I communicate that? I want to say that I'm not challenging anymore. They're going to do that by stopping. They're going to stand in place, they're going to sit, or they're going to lie down. As soon as they do any of those three things, you're going to take your 2 feet and take a left foot, or right foot, left foot, even though I just did that backwards, 2 steps only backwards. Don't take a third step, don't shuffle, don't swing your hips. Stop, wait 1 second, then go back to doing what you're doing. Pausing 1 second after you take your movement is like a punctuation for the dog. Taking 2 steps only in a big sudden movement, now the dog's saying, when I stopped moving and stopped challenging the human backed down by taking 2 steps away from me. Then they paused, and then they went back to doing what they're doing. So that's the second consequence, marching directly, or standing up and facing the dog until it's stationary, then taking 2 steps backwards. The third consequence is marching at the dog. When I march the dog, I do it with intent. I'm not stopping at the dog, I'm moving briskly, I want to give them a flinching experience. March directly at the dog until it tells you that it's no longer challenging you. It will do that by turning itself sideways or greater. As soon as it turns sideways, stop. Now, if you have your feet spread like this will look indecisive, so complete your movement, then you go to the second consequence. You're pivoting. As long as that dog's moving when it's stationary, you take 2 steps back, pause a second, and go back to doing what you're doing. That's the third consequence. The only time that wouldn't apply is, let's say that the line is here. Well, if the dog is still inside a designated no dog area. So if the dog is not supposed to be on this side of this line, and it turns sideways here, I would still bump into it, and I would stop bumping into it when I get to where the line is. This is how we establish invisible boundaries. So whether it's the kitchen or around here or wherever it is. And then the fourth consequence is putting the dog on a leash timeout. We put the dog on a leash, we step on it, in these dogs' case, about 4 feet away from where it attaches to the leash. They will protest a little bit. When they do, don't say anything. Wait, let them burn energy. When they get done, they will sit down. Don't tell them to sit. When they sit, it's their way of saying, I'm challenging you less. Wait for them, and as soon as they sit, they're going to sit as far away as the leash will allow. So take your foot that's on the leash and slide it towards the dog to take the tension off the leash. A minute later, sometimes several minutes later, it will lay down like this. When he lays down like this, if I'm standing on the leash right here, I very subtly take my foot back. Now the dog is free, but it's still dragging, the leash is still attached. So when it walks away, it's going to be dragging the leash. It's dangerous for a dog to drag a leash unsupervised, so don't let it walk around unsupervised. But if you take the leash off right away, down, then he thinks, oh, we're done. I can go back to doing what I'm doing. So we wait a minute or two, and that way if he starts barking, she starts barking, or he just says something wrong, as he runs by, we can step on the leash and reapply the consequence. Or if a couple minutes go by and the dog is good, we detach the leash. It's not quid pro quo. When you're being defiant, you lose all freedom. When you return to a completely calm and balanced state of mind, freedom is restored. So we have a set of escalating consequences that we can use. At first, it's going to be hiss, stand, march, leash time out. After a while, it'll be hiss, stand, up, march, then hiss, stand, then it'll just be hiss. I can get my dog to drop a live squirrel out of her mouth with a hiss, but she knows if she doesn't, I'm going to go to the next step, the next step, the next step. So for that, make sure you're using these. Always start with your hiss, unless the dog's already broken the rule. But the hiss is, remember, a warning before they break the rule. The hiss is really about timing. If you're too late, it won't work as well. All right, Knox, is there anything else? I can't remember anything else. Is there anything else, buddy? Well, this is Knox and Maya's roadmap to success. We didn't get a chance to meet the puppy, but I'm sure it's a cute little puppy. Hopefully we'll see him in our puppy socialization class. If this is the guardian, the other partner watching it, 95% of the dogs I work with did not go to puppy class. Just because your dog hangs out with 2 other dogs, puppy, does not mean he's going to be well socialized. If you hang out with your parents, that doesn't make you cool to your friends. So get him into it, whether it's ours or somebody else, make sure you get him a puppy socialization class. The sooner you get him in, the better. I got mine in at like 10 weeks. The sooner you get it, the more effective it will be. All right, Knox, it was a pleasure meeting you, buddy. You're a very handsome dog. He's like, I know. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you meet him.